So for those who doesn't know me, I'm Sandro Pereira. I'm the head of integration at Tepscope. This is a consultant company in Portugal. I am an Azure MVP, but my focus is on enterprise and also in this area of automation, power apps, specific power apps, and power automation, aka Flow. So I've been following these technologies since the beginning. Actually, they started in the Beastall team in the past, and they grew up and now they are in this Office 365 tenant or focus on Office 365. That makes more sense than the Beastall team or the integration team that Microsoft. So I've been following these technologies since they started, and I am a fan, I have to say. But my focus is on enterprise integration. So you have my blogs there, my contacts, my social networks. Feel free to reach me out. And if you have any questions, just chat in the chat meeting. I will be watching the chat also, so feel free to interrupt me. Okay. I have to say we are in lockdown. I have 3 kids. It's a house full of kids. It's Saturday, so I don't know if they will enter in the door by that door and make some noise. So if that happens, I apologize in advance. Bear with me. They are young. So what I love about Power Platform is the how fast we can develop any kind of application or process integration, whatever. No, it's kind of no-code, low-code technologies that everyone, and you don't need to be a developer, everyone can do this kind of applications. No. For example, we had a challenge on the beginning of this COVID phase or crisis, no pandemic, in February, March of 2020. That the one hospital here in the north had the need to track the patients that go to the booths of COVID with symptoms and follow that process since that booth cabin until they know the result. And we did that with Power Apps, Flows, SharePoint, and so on, all other kind of stuff in 2 days. So it's really fast how we can do awesome applications to address the daily challenge of any organization and so on. But also, and in this case, be more focused on our topic of the sessions, the power automation, is how hard your flows, because you do it fast, you do it quickly, but how are them? Are they reliable? What I'm doing wrong, or what I can improve? Sometimes you need to do these questions and go back and see what is, do an assessment of our flows, okay? So let me guide you from one of the 10, 12 tips that I have here for you today. So the first one is, and you probably all of you guys know, is that Power Automate is a new name. It was rebranded. Now it's called Power Automate, but in the preview was Microsoft Flow, and even the icon changed it. Why is that important? Because we have 5 years of documentation that probably has the name Microsoft Flow. And these documentation are still good for consuming today, because most of the stuff that was written with Microsoft Flow is still valid using today's Power Automate. So if you are searching for questions, just searching for learning, you need to remember that sometimes you can type Microsoft Flow and then and nowadays everything will be Power Automate. So again, there is 5 years probably of documentation using Microsoft Flow. So be aware of that. So the first tip that I have for you, and this for me is very important, is about naming conventions. Okay, in this case, the name of the flow. Okay, use descriptive names. It improves readability. It transfers knowledge. If the flow name it's already a good name, and people by reading the name understand the basic what this kind of flow is doing, it's transfer knowledge between teams. Even other people that pick that flow or it needs to redesign something, add new features or something like that. He knows exactly what is getting. Okay, he wants that specific flow. It doesn't need to go by a list of sometimes have a big list of flows to check what is the flow that he wants to change or what this flow is doing. And you can actually use all types of characters. It doesn't need to be with accents and so on and so forth. So let me give you an example. And this was something that I took from my test environment. No, the first one is in Portuguese, sorry, but is changing water of floor 4. SQL check user, SharePoint save survey. I did that probably in several meetings and proof of concept, but looking now, I don't know what they are doing, to be honest. The only one that it's pretty much okay is the one that you see in green, that is Power BI meetup feedback flow. I know what is for. It's just we have this group, and this is the feedback for the sessions. So it should be you should have a naming convention in your client, in your organization, whatever, and you should follow some kind of best practice naming convention for your flows. For example, the first one, I know there's a dev scope administrative task, and this is for inventory, and it's changed the water bottle of the fourth floor, and you have the third floor. So by using this name, more extend, I can actually understand why, what is that kind of flows, no? On the last 3, I know that they are from DevScope again, and this is a time report app that we have, and is for create time reports, get budget, and get project by names, and so on and so forth. So by using this kind of naming convention, it's more clear what the flows are doing without me needs to enter in each of one to understand that. Okay, so I'm not saying that this is the naming convention that you should use, or it is the best naming convention that you may see in all your life. You just need to pick one naming convention that adjusts to you or to your organization or client, and use them across your flows. Okay. If you are, most of you probably are not developers. Some of you may be developers. This is the same. If you are coding C#, you don't type class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. No, you give the proper class name. So if you're doing that by using code, why not you doing that in the flows? Okay. So staying in the naming convention, naming convention for me is important. The third tip is naming convention of actions, the actions that you put inside your flows. Again, by using a good naming convention in each shape, you are improving readability. You are transferring knowledge by your team. You don't need to have a fancy document, a Word document explaining whatever this flow is doing or something like that. By actually doing this good naming convention, you are doing a good documentation itself. You can rename actions even if they have dependency directly now. So in the past, it was kind of difficult to do that because we couldn't rename actions that have dependencies. We kind of need to rewrite our flow again to fix all of this stuff. Nowadays, you can do it easily. The only thing that you need to be aware is there are some special characters you cannot use inside the name of the actions. So let's see an example here. A simple example, but if I have to do an analysis or a health check on that, I actually don't know by looking on the design what it's doing. I know that there is a variable, there is a condition, and there is a true false, and there is a for each send message, but I don't know where to when or what. I have to go shape by shape to understand that. I initialize a variable, but what kind of variable, no? So this can be improved, okay? No, DBS is dev scope in this case, not Dataverse. So if this was a question on the chat, if I have to improve that, and this is a similar flow that I have, I can say I'm initialize the name of the variable. I put the name of the variable there. So by putting the name of the variable, it's more readable. I know that is HTML email body that I'm initialize. There is a step description of the variable that I'm initialize again. At the condition, I'm putting a description on the condition. Check if we receive an array or an object of a general notification. So I know that I'm checking there if a specific record is a simple record, in this case like a JSON, or it is an array of elements there. And in the other steps, again, it's converting a step code to description, set description variable. So by putting proper names on the actions, it's more readable. It's simple to read. Even for you that probably made that flow, you will remember everything in the beginning, but after 1 month, you go to the same flow, you are not able to remember what you did there. And you have to go enter shape by shape again to know exactly what you are doing, you know? Again, this is the same if there is a sharp developer that put var1, var2, var3 step, function 1, function 2, function 3, in my team will be fired. So you will not do that as a developer. You shouldn't do that in your flows. You should give a proper name, okay? The only issue here is that some of the triggers, most of them, that is the first shape, doesn't allow you to change the name, okay? So specifically this one that you are seeing when a HTTP request is received, I wish I could change that name, but we can't at the moment. It's a limitation of the connector of the design. And again, even you can go to your flows at the moment. And even if they are dependents, you can just three dots, rename it, and you can put a different name without losing or broke your flows. There is one important exception here that you need to be aware. So if you see on the screen, the Power BI connection is broke, and it has a dependency on the parse JSON. If I'm renaming the parse JSON without fixing the connection, what will happen is once I fix the connector, the Power BI connector, as you see on the screen, it stays with the old reference to the parse JSON. So in this case, I can name parse JSON to parse JSON A, and you see that the tokens on the Power BI connector is a reference to parse JSON and not parse JSON A. So if you have this kind of scenarios, you first need to fix the connectors, fix all the connections that you have that are broke, and then you can rename it, and it will automatically fix all the reference from parse JSON to parse JSON A. Okay. Again, staying on the same concept, in this case, comments, add comments, and why is also important. Again, it improves readability. It transfers knowledge between your teammates and allows you to have also future frustrations of not understanding what you did. So every expression may or should have a comment. But especially when you think that it's quite important to do that. So I told you that when HTTP request is received, or the trigger, it doesn't allow you to change the name of the trigger, but it allows you to put a comment. So in this case, all my HTTP requests receive shapes or triggers has a comment. So in this case, I receive a JSON with an evaluation form, OCR metadata from a smart documented. Once I'm going to that flow, I know that I'm receiving an evaluation form from a smart documented tool that is a product that we have internally at DevScope for OCR. That OCR tool capture all the document, and it will send me the information to my flow, so I can process it, insert on the SharePoint, Office 365, whatever I need to do with this document. So I'm taking from the paper and transform it digital and save it somewhere. So I know what this flow is receiving now. Okay. Another step example is, for example, initialize variables. We can have many variables in a flow, but sometimes you don't really know why we are using that. In this case, for example, I put that I use this variable to render the proper HTML body to send it in a email with the auto connector. So with this strategy, I can send a proper and well-formatted HTML email with a good indentation. And for example, what I use on the conditions is that you see that when you put expressions on the conditions, we have this small text box, like purple text box saying string 3 dots, or whatever function you have, 3 dots. For you to understand what is inside, you have to click that. It it pop-ups a different window or the expression pop-up, and you probably have a small text box also to read all the expression. For you to minimize this effort and don't need to every time go to that pop-up window, you can copy the expression that you are using and put it in the comment. Now I know that this condition is checking if the general notification is starting with a bracket, or I don't know in English proper name, it's bracket, rectangular bracket. Sorry. So it's readable. You don't have, it will have less effort for you to read and see what is doing. This condition is doing. Another stuff is, for example, you can create scopes, and you can put a comment on the beginning of the scope saying these sections is doing these kind of actions. So you know that these 4 or 5 shapes is getting, for example, parameters from key vault and database. Okay. Another tip that a good feature of Power Automate is that also adds this copy to my clipboard functionality. No, it will allow you to easily duplicate your actions or scope and avoid to re-enter everything again and again. So sometimes you have different branch of a condition, and kind of it's the same structure but with different configurations. We can copy that and paste it in all the branch, and it expedite your work. And again, it's quite easy. Just select the scope or select the shape you want, 3 dots, copy to my clipboard, and then you go to another branch or another flow, because this is not, this copy to clipboard is not focused in the flow that you are building at the moment. You can go to one flow, copy it, go to a different flow and paste it. Okay, it will work. You have this clipboard across flows. And you see, when you have when you try to add an action on your flow, you go to the My Clipboard tab, and you see all of your copy that you made from previous flows, or the current work that you do. This is not the last copy. If you copy to My Clipboard several times, it will add all your copies in that context. Again, this is across flows. If you want to clear the clipboard, you just close the window or press F5 to refresh the browser, and your clipboard goes away. Okay, this is like a cache clipboard. So scopes, and using scopes. What are scopes mainly? A scope can be many things, no? So if you are familiar with C#, C# are this kind of region that basically is for collapsing code and grouping code. A scope is a region on the flow. You can use a scope to contain several actions, conditions inside, and you can collapse it so the flow can get bigger and bigger, and you can collapse certain zones and it will be easier for you to read, okay, without scrolling left, scrolling up, and so on and so forth. So this can be a region, but again, if you are familiar with C#, we have this concept of try, catch, and you can use finally. So try, it's trying to do the actions or the functions that are inside. If it fails, go to the catch, and the finally will be always execute independent of the catch is throw or not. So the same in the flow. So to implement this try catch functionality, we use scopes, and scopes are used to do that. So in this case, we need to have a scope for a try, a scope for a catch, and a scope for a finally, and they all need to be linked and in sequence. I will explain better in this next tip. So error handling and configuration runs after settings. There are many ways for you to implement robust flows and persist to failures and control errors. One of that is the try catch strategy. So we create a scope, we put all the actions that we want to execute inside that scope, and then below that we create a second scope. We can call it a catch scope, and we can put all the actions that you need to do to control the exceptions that occurred previously. For example, logging to a system that you have. On that scope properties, so you press the three dots and the run afters, you need to choose as failure or as timeout from the previous scope. Okay, so that means that if something fails or timeouts on that region, it will jump and run what is inside the catch scope. Below the catch scope, we create an additional one, and we can call it finally a scope. Of course, again, you should give proper name. You should start with try. It will be easier, but put a better name than try scope. So don't follow this design, the naming of this design. And on the final, you put all the actions that you need to execute after all of this stuff, and you need to select all of the options on the run after. So what you are saying here is, independent of the catch scope is skipped. If something fails inside that, I don't care also. If the catch scope has timeout or successful, it will be the final will be always execute. So basically, you are saying that I don't care what happens on the catch, I will be executed. So in this case, we have these strategies of if something fails on the try, the catch will be executed, and the finally scope will also be executed. But to do this kind of try-catch situations, we don't actually need the scope. We need the scope to do a try-catch in multiple actions. If you want to control, for example, or by default, okay, by default, the run after is if the previous actions is executed. That's why you see that if something fails, an action fails on your flow, there is an exception and the flow is stopped on that point. But we can actually say that, for example, if something fails on for example, if I have a log message, the log message is for logging. If it fails, I don't care. It shouldn't broke nothing. If it fails to log, it shouldn't be important to your process. So I can actually say that if the log fails, just run the action below. And even inside the try, the scopes, in this case inside the try that you see on the picture, If I have some logging stuff, I can also say if it fails, just ignore it and pass it. So I have like a try inside a try, and it doesn't broke in non-critical or non-essential actions that you may have in your flow. Okay. And also on each connector, in this case, for example, the Dropbox connector, you have the settings and you have the timeouts and retry policies that are by default, but you can actually tuning and change it. And in this case, for example, I'm saying that I want to retry 6 times on a fixed interval, 6 times using 20 seconds. So you see this PT20S, this ISO 8601 format, and you have some samples here that you can put PT20X is 20 seconds, 15M is minutes, hours, days, and so on and so forth. So that means that if something fails, for example, a connectivity issue, it will not raise an error. It will try after 20 seconds, and then after 20 seconds, and only fails and throw an error after it reached the 6th attempt to send the file or create the file on the Dropbox. So in this way, you have this try approach on the actions, especially on these actions that are sending and communicate to other systems. Okay. So we have different kind of try catch on the scope on each action, and each action has retry policies. So there are a lot of settings and a lot of that you can tune to control your failures on your flows. And you need to learn from failures. Okay. If a flow fails, for me, it says that a failure is critical. I'm working on enterprise integration for the last 15 years, and all the process needs to be successful executed. If something fails, there are a critical issue there that I need to focus my attention, say why it fails. And if it failed for expected behavior, then you must redesign your flow not to fail. Okay, just to, if expected that situation, he has to successful finish, not fail. Okay, fail is critical. So you need to learn from your mistakes. You have to go to the history and check why it's failing, and try to address that problem. Of course, sometimes a failure is a failure because the system was down. Then you cannot do nothing. But I mean, failing from expected behaviors. In C#, and I'm speaking about C# because I was a C# developer in the past also, and I do a lot of C# also. We use defensive code. So if you want to connect to a SQL database, we are using command. We are getting the query or executing the query, and you are checking if there is something to read on the query. Does it return the results? Or if it returns the results, then I go to the result sets and read the data from there. Now, we use defensive code. Why not do the same in Power Automate flows? Okay. So I see a lot of scenarios that people go to a system, getting the data, and they automatically guarantee that the data is there and just put the next action and associate the tokens, and that's it. So this actually was a real scenario that I faced on one of my coworkers, and I was just passing by and I saw him doing some flows, and I asked him, "What are you doing with flows? Are you playing around?" And he showed me that, and I saw that fail and I said, "Why is failing that?" Oh, that's normal because we are getting data from the SQL database and there is no data there, so it fails. Yeah. This cannot happen. I told them, man, this cannot happen. You have to control that. If you expect not having data and it's failing because it doesn't have a data, this has to be controlled on your flow. You have to redesign your flow to expect that behavior. So basically, we have scenarios that we have the result set, but the table is empty. And sometimes you have only the result set without the table one. So in this case was broken the scenario, and we fixed that by do a condition. Do a condition if there was a value on the first element of the table, the last run, or if there exists a table, something like that. No, and by doing that, we avoid this annoying situation of failing because there was no data expected. Okay? So do not take as granted that the information is there. Most of the time, that's true, but sometimes you have to control it. You have to check it. That's why it's important for you to go back to the history and check why it's happened and try to avoid these situations on the upcoming runs. And now I reached the expression nightmare. So we already spoke about that small windows, purple windows that you see on the conditions, and for me is a kind of nightmare because of the developer experience. Basically, the engine has several functions that you can use to manipulate data, manipulate strings, adding number operations, mathematic operations, manipulate XML, JSON, whatever. Okay, there are a lot of functions that are pre-built on the engine, are part of the engine, and this is the most used body and a strange string with underscores. So basically, this means that you are linking an action, and the underscore are the space of the name of the action replaced. So the name of the action that you put on the designer behind on the code, all the space will be replaced by underscore. So if you want to type and link to an action, you have to pick the name of that and replace all the space with underscores. And you see that every time that you do the expression, there is these small windows that you see on the right with a small text that you can put large expressions there. And on the design, you see a small small string. So for me, this is a kind of nightmare, and there is no properly case sensitive or indentation there, and it is for me one of the worst parts of doing something on the flows. Again, you have these huge expressions that you need to fit and put inside a text. Sometimes what I do is just copy to Notepad or Notepad++, and I put that kind of expression indented with separations, just to need to control if it's properly written, and then put it back to a simple line and copy to that text box. And as you see here in the example, this is, for example, how we can do a average of 4 numbers. So we add this add operation, but the add operation only allows two elements, and even the divide only allows two elements on the input of the function. So we need to do this kind of add inside an add just to divide that, and then put it in a single line, pass it to that shape. Again, there is no better experience. I choose to do it in OneNote or Notepad or Notepad++, so to be easier. And I put most of these expressions inside the comment, so I can read it without going to that small window, and have to scrolling to that small text box. 10, flow checker. So flow checker is actually a very good, cool feature on the flow. I wish I had some kind of this in Logic app, but I don't really have that. But it allows you to, or it performs a design check, and it highlights the errors. So why this is important? If it's a small and straightforward flow, it's easy for you to see the errors. But once you have conditions, scopes, minimize scopes, and all of this stuff, you lose the perspective of the errors that are inside your flow. Because you see the errors. If there was an error here, you saw a yellow exclamation saying there is a problem there. But inside the scope, there are several actions. There is a failure inside, but you don't see that the scope is failing. Okay, and again, if it's a big flow, you lose the perspective. You have to scroll down to the screen to see the errors. So this feature allows you, and you see, if you see a red dot there, it means that there is an issue. And if you click there, it will highlight all the errors that you have on the flow. And most important, if you click in one of them, it will jump directly to the scope where is the problem. Okay, so you don't need to go and try to find where is the problem. It highlights and it has links directly, and it expand the flow and open the proper shape where is the problem, so you can easily fix that. This is a time saver feature. It allows you to save a lot of time doing some trying to search where are the problems. And now we are almost finished up. Sharing the flows. You can, of course, share the flows with team members and other users, but you have to be careful on what you share and how you share the stuff. Send a copy. Send a copy is basically sending a copy of your flow is completely disconnected with your flow. So you are sending like a different document, a different flow to your team member. If it changes, it doesn't change it's a complete separate flow. But it's important, for example, if you have a personal flow, control some tasks, and your team members say, hey, this is cool, can you arrange me that? Just send a copy, so it doesn't need to recreate. You just need to fix the connections, put his connection, and that's it. It's quite effective. You are sharing a template. Okay, so you select the flow. In this case, for example, I have a Airbnb house, and I control check-in of my guests. So they have to provide. It's the same of when you reach an hotel. You have to provide your identity card, and they take notes of where you are from, your name, what days you are staying. So you need to provide that information to the national organization to control the tourism and so on. The same here. So, but instead of me being there, I will send a link to a form. They will fill the form. I'm getting the notes. And if I want to share to one of my friends that has also a B&B houses, I can send a copy. I send it, put the email of him, and he will receive a template for that. So he can use it and have the same strategy that I use. There is only one exception, is that you only are allowed to share if the last run was successful. So I had this situation that I was facing an issue, and I was trying to send that template to my friend so he can help me out solving the problem. So I was with other work, and I was trying to try to fix that for me. And I was trying to send the template of the flow, and I got this error message saying, well, I cannot share a flow that was not properly executed. So what I did was I removed the shapes that were failing. I execute as a dummy execution, successful. I add the shapes there again, send it to my co-worker for him to finish the work and solve the problem. It was just a strategy, but we note that you cannot share a flow if the last execution was not successful. And the other option is share with other users or security groups. In this case, you are not sharing a template, you are sharing the flow. Okay, so it's like a teamwork. You can go inside your flow and change that flow. Okay, it's working as a team. So again, I can go to share and I can say, okay, owners. Unfortunately, there is only one option, is owners. And I say that Catarina Rika is one of my co-workers, has owner capability of that flow also. Why this is the important stuff that you need to know here, and this is really important. If you are using your credentials, for example, in this case, you are seeing that I use my email address to connect to Office 365 Outlook. Okay, so that means that now Katerina is able to do whatever he wants with my email address. No, he can actually create another action on that flow, send a mail to my boss, insulting him. Okay, or he can get my emails, my private emails, and forward to her. So be careful with that. So if you are sharing your flow, avoid using personal accounts, because they can do nasty stuff with the stuff that that are there. Okay, so again, you need to be aware of that. The rest, everything is okay. Of course, she cannot go have access to my password, but she can do actions on my email. There are one other option. This is mainly, for example, in flow buttons. It allows you to specify run-only users. So you create a flow button, and you can you can allow that your organization or several team members can execute that flow. This is good because everyone that wants to execute that flow needs to provide their connections. Okay, to provide their credentials, for example, to use Office 365. So let's say that I have a button to send an email. If I'm using, I will use Sun Operator, but if Pedro is executing, it will send it to the email by Pedro and not by my email. So this is quite good to have. No, I'm not going to show them how to use bolts. Maybe next next in the next event. Here is just highlight some best practice. And with that, it's all I have. I still have 9 minutes to questions if you have any doubt, any suggestion, or saying other stuff that you want, like other best practices that you may suggest to other people. Feel free to jump in.
Thank you, Sandro. Yes, so the reason why this session is so important is because there's so many citizen developers that are starting to build flows, and I think is very important, as you mentioned, Sandro, to follow the proper development standards when building out flows. So I think this was a very good piece of education for especially the citizen developers who've been doing some great stuff, adding a lot of value to their organizations. And this is taking it a notch up, getting their quality of their automations. Yeah.
Indeed, they are the person that knows more about the business than the developers, no? And they are doing a lot of stuff that they don't need a developer to do that. They can automate their personal tasks. They can automate professional tasks that they are doing. But at some point, I think that is important to have this kind of assessment and put that citizen developer implementation to the next level. Okay, more robust, more professional, and if they are educated to do that from the beginning, that's awesome. Yeah.
So there is a question by Jan. I don't know if you saw that, Sandro.
Yeah, that's me. Do you have any best practice how to manage failed flow runs? Image that you have 20 flows which are triggering every 10 minutes. Sometimes there could be an issue. How there now there isn't any global management on top of flow. Well, to be honest, I never did that with the flows. I normally do that with Logic App, which is kind of different situation because in Logic App we have more tooling to do that, as with monitoring, other stuff like that. So we have different ways to do that. But I know that in the past, I think was Kent Weir that was here yesterday. He was doing a flow to control the flow's execution. I don't know if that makes much sense or not. Something that I will probably try in the future. But yeah, I know what you do. What you are saying, that you kind of monitoring and alarmistic inside your all your flows, no? And there isn't nothing that I can remember out of the box at the moment.
Okay, there's a question there by Felix, Sandro. It's
app license compared to user license, does it work the same way when sharing your flow with others? With app license, you can share with others well, I'm not honestly, I'm not the correct person to speak about that. I don't really know too much about licensing nowadays. I know they changed it radical. I normally go to my team for licensing. It's for me, it's a kind of nightmare licensing nowadays with Power Automate. I don't know how to answer that. Sorry, Felix.
That's completely fine. Yeah. So are there any? Oh, I think there's no. Any more questions?
Do you have any best practice for dynamic SharePoint connects? If there is, if a different SharePoint site is used for their prod environments? Not really. I know your pain. This is not an issue about. This is an issue connecting issue. Yeah, we face the same issue in flows and logic apps across because the connector is the same. So if you are using a SharePoint for their prod and environments, I will use different environments in in uh, in um, in flows. So we have one flow for dev, another environment for test, and another environment for production, and you need to fix that site. In Logic App use the same strategy, but in case of environment is resource or subscriptions. But there we have continuous deployment that with key vaults and other stuff, we can fix that and deploy to different environments and fix that URL of SharePoint. Here in Power Automate, I don't really. I probably should that there is no DevOps. Not really sure, but it's just having different environments to do that.
Well, there you go. So that was Sandro. So again, thank you so much, Sandro, for joining us today. It was a great, huge pleasure to have you. So you shared your connection details. Do you have any final words to the community?
Just thank you for inviting me. It was really a pleasure to be here, and a great event that you guys are doing. And see you next time. Thank you for attending.